The C-130 Hercules shuddered as it touched down on the desert airstrip, sending vibrations through Staff Sergeant Maya Chen's boots. She'd been awake for 36 hours straight. First the flight from Virginia to Germany, then Germany to Kuwait, and finally this last leg into the forward operating base somewhere in the Syrian desert. The classified location didn't appear on any map, just miles of sand and stone, punctuated by hastily erected buildings and rows of military vehicles baking under the merciless sun. Maya grabbed her pack and rifle case, stepping out into heat that hit like a physical wall. 115 degrees easy. She'd trained in worse. The hot air carried the smell of jet fuel, dust, and that particular scent of deployed life, sweat, gun oil, and determination. This was it. The assignment she'd fought years to earn. The one that would either cement her legacy or destroy it. "Yu Chen," a staff sergeant with a clipboard approached, his eyes doing a quick up-down assessment that she'd grown accustomed to. Always that moment of surprise, quickly masked. Always that flicker of doubt. "That's right," she replied, adjusting the pack on her shoulders. "Welcome to Fob Viper. Commander Reeves is waiting in the TOC. Follow me." As they walked through the base, heads turned. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Maya kept her eyes forward, her stride confident. She'd earned her Navy SEAL trident through the same brutal training that broke most men. 24 weeks of hell at basic underwater demolition SEAL training. She'd survived the cold of Hell Week, the endless runs through soft sand, the log PT that crushed stronger candidates, and the pool harassment that left some gasping for air and ringing the bell to quit. She'd conquered dive phase, land warfare, and finally earned that trident pin to her chest. But pins and accomplishments meant nothing here. She knew that. In the teams, you proved yourself every single day. The Tactical Operations Center was a climate-controlled refuge from the heat. Inside, 12 Navy SEALs stood around a large table covered with maps and satellite imagery. Every single one of them was male. Every single one of them turned to look at her with the same expression, skepticism mixed with barely concealed resentment. "Gentlemen, this is Staff Sergeant Maya Chen," announced Lieutenant Commander James Reeves, a weathered operator in his late 30s with intelligent eyes and the kind of stillness that came from 20 years of combat experience. "She'll be joining Phantom Platoon as our designated marksman." Silence, heavy and oppressive. "That's her, the diversity hire." The words came from somewhere in the back, deliberately loud enough to be heard but quiet enough to maintain deniability. Maya's jaw tightened, but she kept her expression neutral. She'd heard worse during training. Commander Reeves's eyes hardened. "Something to say, Stone." Petty Officer Derek Stone stepped forward, a muscular man with a square jaw and eyes like chips of ice. "Just wondering about qualification standards, sir. Some of us have been trying to get into this unit for years." "Staff Sergeant Chen graduated Bud S in the top 15% of her class," Reeves said flatly. "Her sniper scores are among the highest I've ever seen. Any other questions about qualifications?" More silence, but this one simmered with unspoken challenges. Reeves gestured to the table. "We've got a briefing in 30 minutes. Chen, stow your gear in Tent 4 and be back here at 1600 hours. The rest of you, I want current intel reports on my desk before the briefing. Move." The SEALs filed out and Maya felt their stares like physical touches. Some were curious. Most were hostile. A few seemed almost pitying, as if she were a lamb being led to slaughter. She found Tent 4, a standard military temporary structure that slept 8. Her bunk was the only one without personal items around it, isolated at the far end. Someone had helpfully left a pink teddy bear on her pillow, real mature. Maya tossed the bear into the trash and began unpacking with methodical efficiency. First, her weapons. She'd brought her MK-13 Mod 7 sniper rifle, a .300 Winchester Magnum that she'd personally customized and zeroed to perfection. Then her sidearm, a Sig Sauer P226. Extra magazines, cleaning supplies, ammunition. Everything had its place. "Nice rifle." The voice made her turn. A younger SEAL stood in the doorway, maybe mid-20s, with an earnest face. "I'm Petty Officer Martinez, just wanted to say, don't let them get to you. Some of these guys, they're old school." "I'm not here to make friends," Maya replied, though she appreciated the gesture. "I'm here to do my job." "Fair enough," Martinez hesitated. "For what it's worth, I saw your scores. They're legit, just be careful. Stone and a few others, they've been pretty vocal about women in the teams. Don't give them any ammunition." Maya met his eyes. "I don't plan to." At 1600 hours, she returned to the TOC. The briefing covered current intelligence on local terrorist cells, recent insurgent activity, and potential high-value targets in the region. When Commander Reeves opened the floor for questions about tactical positioning for their next patrol, Maya studied the terrain map and raised her hand. "What about establishing overwatch from this ridge line? Better sight lines, covering the entire approach." The room erupted in barely suppressed laughter. "Cute," Stone said, his voice dripping with condescension. "Why don't you let the men handle tactical planning, sweetheart? Maybe you can handle comms or something less complicated." Maya's eyes locked on his. "That ridge provides 360-degree coverage with." "We've been running ops in this area for 6 months, Stone interrupted. "But sure, the new girl knows better after being here for 2 hours. Commander Reeves raised his hand for silence. "Actually, Chen's right. That ridge is a superior position. We'll incorporate it into the patrol route. Good catch, Staff Sergeant." Stone's face flushed red, but he said nothing more. As the briefing concluded, Maya remained behind to study the maps more carefully. She knew what was happening. This was the test. They wanted her to fail, to quit, to prove their prejudices right. But Maya Chen didn't quit. She never had. She'd prove them wrong. One shot, one mission, one day at a time. The patrol left Fob Viper at 400 hours, moving through the darkness like ghosts. 12 operators, full combat load, heading into a village that intelligence suggested was harboring an insurgent cell. Maya moved in formation, her MK-13 across her chest, every sense heightened. Petty Officer Stone was point man, leading them through narrow streets that smelled of cooking fires and sewage. Martinez covered their 6. Commander Reeves positioned himself in the middle of the formation, coordinating with overhead drones through his tactical tablet. Maya had been assigned as designated marksman, responsible for long-range threats and overwatch. "Spread out, 2-meter intervals," Reeves whispered into his mic. "Chen, take the rooftop on our left. Give us eyes on the square ahead." "Copy," Maya responded, already moving toward the crumbling building. She climbed the external stairs quickly but carefully, testing each step before committing her weight. The rooftop was flat, scattered with debris and old satellite equipment. Perfect cover. She went prone behind a low wall, setting up her rifle with practiced efficiency. Through her scope, the village square came into sharp focus. A dried-up fountain in the center, market stalls shuttered for the night, narrow alleyways branching off in 6 directions. The pre-dawn darkness was fading to gray. "In position," she reported. "Square is clear, 3 possible egress routes visible." "Maintain overwatch," Reeves ordered. "We're moving through." Below, the team advanced in tactical formation. Maya's scope swept methodically across potential threat points, windows, doorways, rooftops. Her breathing was calm and controlled, her trigger finger resting alongside the trigger guard. Not on the trigger. Never on the trigger until you're ready to shoot. That discipline had been drilled into her thousands of times. "This is overkill," Stone's voice crackled through the comms. "We've got a girl playing sniper while we do the real work." Maya ignored him, continuing her sweep. Professional, always professional. Then she saw it, a flash of movement in a 3rd-story window 400 meters out. Her scope adjusted, bringing the target into focus. Male, military age, holding something. Her heart rate stayed steady as she identified the object. AK-47. Contact third floor window northeast building, she reported calmly. Armed hostile. I don't see, Stone started to say. The morning exploded into chaos. Muzzle flashes erupted from 3 separate positions simultaneously. The insurgents had been waiting, watching, preparing an ambush. Rounds impacted around the SEAL team, kicking up dirt and sparking off stone walls. The SEALs dove for cover, returning fire, but they were caught in a kill zone with limited protection. Contact left, contact front, someone shouted. Maya's training took over completely. Time seemed to slow as her mind processed multiple threats simultaneously. The hostile in the window was tracking Stone with his AK. Maya's crosshairs settled center mass. Controlled breath. Smooth trigger press. Crack! The rifle's report echoed across the village. Through her scope, she saw the hostile drop, his weapon clattering to the floor. No time to confirm. Second threat, rooftop gunman, 380 meters aiming at Reeves. Crack! Down! Third threat, machine gun position being set up in a narrow window, 500 meters distant. The gunner was loading, hadn't fired yet. Maya adjusted for distance and the slight crosswind she'd noted earlier. The target was partially obscured, only his upper torso visible. Crack! The machine gun never fired. The gunner slumped forward. Targets eliminated, Maya reported, her voice still calm despite her racing heartbeat. Square is clear, checking for additional contacts. The entire engagement had lasted 45 seconds. Silence fell over the square, broken only by heavy breathing and the sound of magazines being changed. The SEAL team emerged from cover cautiously, weapons still raised, scanning for additional threats. Chen status, Reeves called up. 3 confirmed kills, no additional hostiles visible. The ambush was coordinated, they were waiting for us. Copy that, good shooting. Team, rally on me. We're moving to secondary position. As the team regrouped and began their tactical withdrawal, Maya collapsed her position and rejoined them at street level. The SEALs were running on adrenaline, the close call still fresh in their minds. Several of them looked at her differently now, not with acceptance, but with a grudging acknowledgement that she'd done her job. Stone walked past the body of the first insurgent she dropped. The shot had been perfect, center mass, instant incapacitation. He stared at it for a long moment, then looked at Maya with an expression she couldn't quite read. Surprise, resentment, maybe both. Back at FOB Viper, the debriefing was tense. Commander Reeves pulled up drone footage of the engagement on the tactical display. The video showed the ambush from above. The SEAL team caught in the open, 3 separate firing positions activating simultaneously, and then the hostile fire stopping abruptly as Maya's shots found their marks. That machine gun would have shredded us, Martinez said quietly, pointing to the window. They had us dead to rights. Reeves nodded. Chen's shooting bought us the time we needed to reach cover and return fire effectively. 3 targets, 3 kills under a minute. That's textbook marksmanship. Stone stood with his arms crossed, his jaw working. Finally, he spoke. Anyone could have made those shots. We all went through sniper training. Then why didn't you see them first? Martinez challenged. Stone's face flushed. I was on point, dealing with immediate threats. And Chen was doing Overwatch exactly as assigned, Reeves interjected firmly. Which is why we have designated roles. She spotted the ambush before they could fully coordinate their fire. That's what saved lives today. The room fell silent. Stone looked like he wanted to argue further but thought better of it. He stormed out of the TOC without another word. As the other SEALs filtered out, several nodded at Maya. Not friendship, not yet, but recognition. She'd proven she could shoot, that was something. Martinez approached her outside the TOC. That was impressive in there. Stone's just pissed because you made him look bad. I'm not here to make anyone look bad, Maya said, cleaning her rifle with methodical care. I'm here to keep my team alive. Yeah, well, you did that today. He paused. Some of the guys are starting to come around. Stone and a few others, though. They're not going to make this easy. Maya looked up from her rifle, her dark eyes steady. I never expected easy. I expected to do my job. Everything else is just noise. That night, lying in her bunk, Maya replayed the engagement in her mind. 3 shots, 3 kills. Her training had held, but she knew this was just the beginning. One good patrol didn't erase prejudice or prove her worth completely. She'd need to be perfect. Not just good, perfect. Because while the men around her could make mistakes and be forgiven, every error she made would be magnified, used as evidence that women didn't belong in combat. The weight of that expectation was heavier than any pack she'd ever carried. But Maya Chen had spent her entire life exceeding expectations. She wasn't about to stop now. Outside, the desert wind howled against the tent walls. Somewhere in the darkness, enemies were planning their next move. And tomorrow, she'd be ready. The call came 3 days later at 600 hours. All Phantom platoon personnel to the TOC immediately. Full kit. Maya was already awake, having completed her morning workout and weapon maintenance. She grabbed her gear and jogged across the compound, arriving at the Tactical Operations Center as the first rays of sunlight painted the desert gold. The other SEALs filtered in, some still rubbing sleep from their eyes, all of them transitioning immediately into mission mode. Commander Reeves stood at the head of the briefing room, his expression grave. Behind him, multiple screens displayed satellite imagery, drone footage, and intelligence reports. The atmosphere was electric with anticipation. "Gentlemen and lady," Reeves began, nodding at Maya. "We've got a high-value target. This is what we've been waiting for." He clicked a remote, and a photograph appeared on the main screen. A man in his 50s with a neat beard and expensive suit, standing beside a convoy of luxury vehicles. Khalid Mansour, Iranian national, terrorist financier, and one of the most wanted men in the Middle East. Intelligence links him directly to 19 separate terrorist attacks across 3 continents, including the bombing of the U.S. Embassy in Ankara that killed 43 people, including 12 Americans. The room went completely silent. Everyone knew that name. Mansour was a ghost, a puppet master who funded terror cells while living in luxury, always one step ahead of intelligence agencies. "How good is the intel?" Stone asked, leaning forward. "Solid. NSA intercepted communications placing him at this compound." Reeves zoomed in on a satellite image showing a fortified structure in a narrow valley. "He's meeting with local cell leaders. We have a 24-hour window before he disappears again, possibly for months." The compound was impressive. High walls, multiple buildings, guard towers at each corner. It sat in a valley surrounded by rocky hills, with a single access road winding through the terrain. The nearest village was 3 kilometers away. "Mission parameters are as follows," Reeves continued, pulling up a tactical map. 12-man assault team will breach at 400 hours tomorrow, fast and quiet. We extract Mansour alive if possible, eliminate him if necessary. Secondary objective, gather any intelligence materials on site. He zoomed in on a ridgeline overlooking the compound. "This is where it gets interesting. The assault team will be vulnerable during approach and extraction. We need overwatch, a sniper position with clear lines of sight on the entire compound and approach route." Maya felt every eye in the room shift toward her. "The hide site is here," Reeves pointed to a position on the ridge, approximately 800 meters from the compound. "Difficult climb, exposed position, but perfect visibility. The sniper will provide early warning, eliminate external guards if necessary, and cover the extraction." Stone raised his hand. "Sir, this is a critical mission. Shouldn't we use someone with more experience? Someone who's run operations in this area before?" The implication was clear. Not her, anyone but her. Reeves's jaw tightened. I'm assigning Chen as primary sniper. Stone, you'll be her spotter. Sir, Is there a problem, petty officer? Reeves's voice dropped to a dangerous quiet. Stone's face reddened. No, sir. Just think we should consider all options. This target is too important to. To what? To trust a SEAL who's proven her shooting skills. Reeves interrupted. Chen's marksmanship scores are higher than yours, Stone. Her performance in the field has been exemplary. Unless you have a specific operational concern, not a personal one, this discussion is over. Stone's mouth opened and closed. Around the room, some SEALs looked uncomfortable. Others watched with interest. Martinez caught Maya's eye and gave a subtle nod of encouragement. Chen, Stone, you'll insert at 200 hours, 2 hours before the assault team. That gives you time to reach the hide site and get set up. This isn't going to be an easy climb in the dark. Maya studied the terrain map carefully. The ridge was steep, covered in loose rock. They'd be climbing with full gear, rifle, ammunition, spotting scope, communications equipment, water, and emergency supplies. 60 pounds minimum in the dark, over treacherous terrain. Rules of engagement, she asked, her voice steady. Weapons free on armed hostiles outside the compound. Once the assault team breaches, you provide supporting fire as needed. But Reeves's expression became even more serious. Intelligence indicates civilians in the area, families, women and children. This compound sits near residential structures. Every shot needs to be certain. Every target needs to be positively identified. The weight of that responsibility settled over the room like a heavy blanket. One wrong shot could kill an innocent, could spark an international incident, could turn a successful raid into a political nightmare. The shot distance will be challenging, Reeves continued. 800 meters minimum, potentially up to 1,000 depending on target positions. Factor in wind coming through the valley, variable speeds and directions, low light conditions, and you'll need to maintain that position for potentially 3 to 4 hours. Stone spoke up again, his voice carefully controlled. Sir, that's an incredibly difficult shot profile. Multiple variables, civilian complications, high-value target on the line. Shouldn't we have a backup sniper? What if? What if Chen can't handle it? Reeves finished for him. Then we'd be having the same conversation about whoever else I assigned. She's trained for this. She's qualified for this. She's doing this. Maya appreciated Reeves's support, but she also understood the enormous pressure he was placing on her shoulders. This wasn't just about taking a difficult shot. It was about proving, once and for all, that she belonged here, that women could operate at the highest levels of special operations. One mistake and she wouldn't just fail herself. She'd set back every woman who came after her. Additional concerns, Reeves scanned the room. No, good, Martinez, Rodriguez, your breach team leaders. Henderson, you've got demolitions. Stone, after you get Chen in position, you'll link up with the assault element. Everyone else, standard loadout. We're going after a major player, people. Let's make it count. As the briefing concluded and specific team assignments were distributed, Maya remained behind, studying the satellite imagery with intense focus. She memorized every feature of the terrain, the compound's layout, potential hide sites, wind indicators, escape routes. Stone approached, his expression unreadable. You understand what's at stake here? I do, Maya replied without looking away from the screen. This isn't a training exercise. This isn't some patrol where if you miss, we call in air support. If you can't make the shots when it counts, people die. Our people. Now she turned to face him directly. I'm aware of the mission parameters, petty officer. Are you questioning my ability or your willingness to work with me? His eyes hardened. Just making sure you understand, because if you freeze, if you hesitate, if you're not up to this. I'll make the shots, Maya said flatly. You just do your job as spotter and I'll do mine. They stared at each other for a long moment, neither backing down. 200 hours, Stone finally said. Don't be late and pack light, it's a hell of a climb. He walked away, leaving Maya alone with the maps and satellite images. She zoomed in on the hide site, calculating angles, distances, potential complications. 800 meters, variable wind, civilians in the area, high-stakes target. She'd trained for shots like this 1,000 times, but training and reality were different animals. In training, you didn't have teammates' lives depending on your accuracy. You didn't have international implications riding on every trigger pull. Martinez found her still studying the maps an hour later. You okay? Fine, she said, just preparing. Look, I know Stone's giving you grief. Most of us aren't like that. He paused, searching for words. We just want to make sure everyone comes home. So do I, Maya said. That's why I'm going to make every shot count. That evening, Maya meticulously prepared her equipment. She cleaned her rifle for the 3rd time, checked and rechecked her scope 0, organized her ammunition by lot number to ensure consistent performance. She packed her gear with obsessive attention to weight distribution and accessibility. As darkness fell over Fob Viper, she lay in her bunk visualizing the mission. The climb, the hide site, the shot sequence. Breathe, acquire target, confirm identification, steady pressure on the trigger, again and again in her mind. Tomorrow, everything would change. Either she'd prove herself worthy of the trident on her chest, or she'd become a cautionary tale about why women didn't belong in special operations. Maya didn't plan on becoming a cautionary tale. At 200 hours, she'd climb that ridge. At 400 hours, she'd be in position. And when her teammates needed her, her rifle would speak with absolute authority. Failure wasn't an option. It never had been. The night was moonless, which was both blessing and curse. Darkness concealed their movement but made the climb treacherous. Maya adjusted her night vision goggles, the world transforming into shades of green as she and Stone began their ascent at precisely 200 hours. Stone moved ahead without a word, setting a brutal pace up the rocky slope. His message was clear: keep up or fail. Maya matched him step for step, her breathing controlled despite the weight on her back. 63 pounds of gear, rifle, ammunition, water, communications equipment, emergency supplies. Every pound felt like 10 in the thin mountain air. The terrain was worse than the satellite imagery had suggested. Loose shale shifted beneath their boots, threatening to send cascades of rock tumbling down the hillside. Each step required careful consideration. One wrong move could trigger a rockslide that would alert every hostile within 5 kilometers. 20 minutes into the climb, Stone paused at a particularly steep section. He looked back at Maya, clearly expecting to see her struggling. Instead, she was right behind him, her breathing steady, her movements efficient. Something flickered across his face, surprise, maybe respect, maybe just annoyance that she was keeping pace. This gets worse, he muttered, then continued upward. He wasn't lying. The next section was nearly vertical, requiring them to use hands and feet, scrambling over boulders while managing their weapons and gear. Maya's shoulders burned from the weight, her fingers scraped raw against the rock despite her gloves. Sweat poured down her back, soaking through her uniform despite the desert night's chill. Stone deliberately chose the most difficult route, testing her. She knew it, and he knew she knew it. This was his way of proving she didn't belong. Every obstacle he cleared, he expected her to fail. Every challenging section, he moved faster, pushed harder. But Maya had survived Hell Week. She'd completed the 50-mile ruck march that broke men twice her size. She'd swum miles in freezing ocean water while instructors tried to drown her. This climb was hell, but she'd been through worse. At 3:15 hours, they were halfway up. Stone called a brief halt behind a large boulder formation. Both of them drank water in silence, checking their equipment. The compound was visible below them now, lights dotting the darkness. Guard towers, vehicles, movement. "You're slower than I expected," Stone said, breaking the silence. It wasn't quite true, they were ahead of schedule, but he needed to take a shot at her anyway. "And you're more predictable than I expected," Maya replied quietly. "Taking the hardest route instead of the fastest, trying to prove a point instead of completing the mission." Stone's jaw clenched. "The mission is getting into position effectively, if you can't handle the climb." "I'm handling it fine. But if you're more interested in breaking me than in getting us to that hide site on time, maybe you should examine your priorities." They stared at each other in the green glow of night vision. For a moment, Maya thought he might actually leave her behind, sabotage the mission just to prove his point. But he was a professional, whatever his personal feelings. After a long pause, he turned and continued climbing. The final approach to the ridgeline was the most exposed. They had to cross a section of open rock face with minimal cover, visible to anyone watching from below with thermal optics. They moved in carefully timed intervals, freezing whenever movement was detected in the compound, advancing during moments of inactivity. At 3:45 hours, they reached the hide site, a natural depression in the ridge with a clear view of the entire valley. Perfect. Maya immediately began setting up their position while Stone established communications with the assault team. "Overwatch in position," he reported quietly into his radio, "beginning site preparation." Maya worked with practiced efficiency, arranging rocks to create a stable shooting platform for her rifle. She used a camouflage net to break up their silhouette against the ridge, positioning it carefully so it wouldn't interfere with her line of sight. Every movement was deliberate, professional, honed by thousands of hours of training. Stone set up the spotting scope, ranged key points in the compound, and began logging wind data. Despite his personal animosity, his professionalism was evident. He was good at his job, Maya could see that. His observations were precise, his notes detailed. As dawn approached, the valley began to emerge from darkness. The compound came into sharp focus through Maya's scope. She could see guard positions now, the layout of buildings, potential threat locations. 812 meters to the main compound entrance. 847 meters to the guard tower on the northeast corner. "Wind's going to be a problem," Stone said, watching the valley through his spotting scope. "Coming through the valley at variable speeds. I'm seeing gusts from 8 to 14 knots, shifting direction. Could be worse during the day when thermal heating kicks in." Maya nodded, making mental calculations. Wind was always the sniper's enemy, but variable wind was the worst. It meant each shot required real-time adjustment, reading the conditions moment by moment. She studied the compound systematically, identifying every detail. 4 guards visible on the exterior, 2 vehicles parked near the main building, satellite dish on the roof, power lines running from a generator, windows, some with curtains, some open, potential firing positions, escape routes. "Guards are disciplined," Stone observed. "Regular patrol patterns, professional spacing. These aren't local militia, they're trained." "Iranian Revolutionary Guard," Maya suggested. "Maybe, or Hezbollah. Either way, they're not amateurs." He adjusted the spotting scope. "The assault team's going to have their hands full if this goes loud." The radio crackled softly. "Overwatch, this is Phantom 1, status check." Stone keyed the mic. "Phantom 1, Overwatch, we're set, clear view of the objective. 4 guards visible on exterior following established patrol patterns. No indication they've spotted us." "Copy, Overwatch. Assault team is 30 minutes out. Hold position and provide updates on any changes in hostile behavior." "Roger that." As they settled in to wait, the tension between them remained palpable but had shifted slightly. Stone had watched Maya complete that brutal climb without complaint, seen her set up a textbook hide site, observed her professional demeanor. It wasn't acceptance, not yet, but the contempt in his eyes had been replaced by something else. Grudging acknowledgement, maybe. That climb, he said after a long silence. Most guys would have asked to stop, take more breaks. I'm not most guys, Maya replied without looking away from her scope. Yeah, he paused, I noticed. The sun crept over the horizon, painting the desert in shades of orange and gold. The compound came alive with morning activity. More guards appeared. Vehicles moved. Maya logged every detail, building a mental map of the target area. Movement northeast building, she reported. Male military age armed, AK-47 variant, taking position on the roof. I see him, Stone confirmed. Looks like they're reinforcing their perimeter. Could be routine, or they might have intel about increased coalition activity in the area. More guards appeared over the next 20 minutes. By 4:30 hours, Maya counted 12 hostiles visible outside the compound, with unknown numbers inside the buildings. Then the assault team's voice came through their earpieces. Overwatch, Phantom 1, we're in position, beginning final approach. Report any hostile movement toward our vector. Copy, Phantom 1, Stone replied. You're clear for now. Hostiles are focused on fixed positions, not scanning approach routes. Maya's world narrowed to her scope. Every muscle was relaxed yet ready. Her breathing was slow and controlled. Her finger rested alongside the trigger guard, ready to move to the trigger at a moment's notice. This was it. The moment everything had been building toward. All the training, all the prejudice, all the doubt, it came down to this. When the assault team needed her, she would be ready. Stone glanced at her, then back through his spotting scope. If this goes sideways, he said quietly, if they get pinned down, those shots you made during the village patrol won't compare. You'll need to be perfect. I know, Maya replied, her voice absolutely calm. I mean it, perfect, every shot, no hesitation, no second guessing. I understand what's required. He studied her profile for a moment. This woman who had climbed a mountain in the dark, set up a flawless hide site, and now waited with the patience of a seasoned operator for the moment of truth. Yeah, he said finally, turning back to his scope, maybe you do. Below them, the assault team moved like shadows through the pre-dawn darkness, closing on the compound. Maya's crosshairs swept methodically across potential threat points, ready to engage the instant her teammates needed her. The wait was over, the mission had begun. And Maya Chen was exactly where she needed to be, behind her rifle, protecting her team, ready to prove that courage and skill had nothing to do with gender and everything to do with training, dedication, and an absolute refusal to let her brothers-in-arms down. The rifle was steady, the sight picture was perfect. She was ready, Phantom 1 to Overwatch. We are 30 seconds from breach point, status. Stone keyed the mic, his voice barely a whisper. Overwatch confirms all clear. 12 hostiles visible on exterior. Guard rotation just completed. You have a window. Through her scope, Maya watched the assault team materialize from the shadows like ghosts. 12 dark figures moving in perfect tactical formation toward the compound's east wall. Commander Reeves led from the center, his hand signals directing the team with precision. Martinez and Rodriguez flanked the main entrance, breach charges ready. Maya's crosshairs tracked across the compound systematically. Northeast guard tower, 1 hostile facing away. Main courtyard, 2 guards talking, distracted. West wall, single sentry, smoking a cigarette. Every potential threat was cataloged, ranged, and prioritized in her mind. 20 seconds, Stone counted down. Guards are still clear of breach point. Maya's breathing slowed. Her heart rate dropped. This was the zone, that place where time seemed to expand, where everything became crystal clear. She'd felt it during competitions, during training, during the village ambush. Now, with everything on the line, she felt it again. 10 seconds, 5, breach in. Headlights. The words died in Stone's throat as 3 trucks roared up the access road, their engines shattering the pre-dawn silence. Heavy trucks, military grade, moving fast. They skidded to stops near the compound entrance, and armed men began pouring out. "Contact! Abort! Abort!" Commander Reeves's voice exploded through the radio. But it was too late. The assault team was already committed, caught in the open between the compound wall and the approaching reinforcements. 20 hostiles, maybe more, all of them armed with AK-47s and PKM machine guns. "Phantom 1 is compromised," Reeves shouted. "Overwatch, we need fire support now." Everything erupted at once. Muzzle flashes lit up the compound like a deadly fireworks display. The newly arrived fighters opened fire on the SEAL team, their bullets tearing through the air in a storm of lead. The assault team returned fire, but they were pinned down, trapped against the compound wall with minimal cover. Engaging, Maya's voice was ice calm as chaos exploded below. Her scope found the first target, a fighter on top of the lead truck, setting up a PKM machine gun. He was swinging the barrel toward where Martinez and Rodriguez were pinned behind a low wall. 863 meters, moderate crosswind from the east, target moving. Maya led him slightly, accounting for his movement and the bullet's flight time. Smooth trigger press. Crack! The rifle's report echoed across the valley. The machine gunner collapsed backward off the truck, his weapon clattering unused to the ground. "Target down," Stone confirmed. "Second hostile, northeast corner, taking aim at Phantom 1's position." Maya was already moving to the next threat. A fighter leaning around the compound entrance, AK raised, finger on the trigger. He had a clear shot at Commander Reeves. Crack! The hostile spun and dropped. 3 more emerging from the east building, Stone called. "They're trying to flank our guys." Maya's scope tracked to the new threats. They were moving fast, using cover effectively, trying to get an angle on the pinned-down SEALs. She took the lead man first, the most aggressive, the most dangerous. Crack! Down! The other 2 dove for cover, but one was a fraction too slow. Maya's follow-up shot caught him mid-dive. Crack! 4 down in under 30 seconds. But the situation was deteriorating rapidly. More hostiles poured from the buildings, and the original guards were converging on the firefight. The SEALs were outnumbered 3-1, and their position was becoming untenable. "Phantom 1 is taking heavy fire," Reeves's voice was strained. "We've got wounded. Request immediate air support." "Air support is 15 minutes out," came the reply from TOC. "Sandstorm north of your position is delaying response." 15 minutes might as well be 15 hours. Through her scope, Maya saw the tactical situation with terrible clarity. The SEALs were pinned against the compound wall. 3 fighters were maneuvering to cut off their escape route. Another group was setting up a machine gun position that would have overlapping fields of fire on the entire team. And then civilians appeared. Women and children burst from one of the residential buildings, running in panic directly into the line of fire. They scattered in all directions, some freezing in terror, others running blindly through the combat zone. "Civilians in the open," Stone reported urgently. "Multiple noncombatants mixed with hostile movement." Maya's scope tracked a fighter raising his weapon toward Martinez, but a child ran between them, crying, lost in the chaos. She couldn't take the shot. Another hostile appeared in a doorway, but an elderly woman stumbled in front of him. "Chen, we need those targets down," Reeves shouted over the radio. "Too many civilians," Maya responded, her voice tight with frustration. "I don't have clear shots." A burst of machine gun fire raked the SEAL's position. Henderson cried out, hit in the leg. Rodriguez dragged him behind better cover while returning fire with his rifle. The hostile fighters were using the chaos deliberately, moving among the panicked civilians, making themselves hard targets. They knew a sniper was active. They'd seen their comrades drop, so they were adapting. Maya forced herself to breathe, to think, to wait for her moment. Patience. Discipline. These were the foundations of sniper craft. Rush a shot in these conditions and she'd kill an innocent, but wait too long and her teammates would die. A fighter broke from cover, sprinting toward a position that would give him a direct angle on the SEAL team. For 2 seconds, he was clear of civilians, a narrow window of opportunity. Crack! He went down hard. Good shot, Stone called. But we've got a problem. Northwest building, 2nd floor. They're setting up something big. Maya's scope swung to the building. Through a window, she could see 2 fighters assembling a heavy weapon. It took her a moment to identify it. A DSHK heavy machine gun, a Soviet-era weapon that fired 12.7 rounds. That gun could punch through the SEAL's body armor like paper. Phantom 1, they're setting up a DSHK, Northwest building, 2nd floor, Stone reported. Take it out, Reeves ordered. Maya adjusted for the new distance, 917 meters. The targets were partially concealed behind the window frame, working quickly to mount the weapon on its tripod. She had maybe 10 seconds before they had it operational. The first fighter moved into her crosshairs, his head and shoulders visible as he bent over the gun. Crack! He dropped. The second fighter dove for cover and the heavy machine gun tipped over, unusable. DSHK neutralized, Stone confirmed. But for every threat Maya eliminated, 2 more seemed to appear. The compound had become a hornet's nest, and the SEALs were caught in the center of it. Phantom 1 to all elements, Reeves's voice came through, punctuated by gunfire. We're going to have to fight our way out. Overwatch, we need continuous suppression on our exit route. Copy that, Stone replied, then turned to Maya. The next 5 minutes are going to be hell. They're going to be moving fast, and you're going to need to keep hostiles off them the entire way. Maya's jaw set with determination. Then that's what I'll do. Her scope tracked across the compound, identifying every hostile, calculating angles, preparing for the running battle that was about to unfold. Her magazine held 20 rounds. She had 4 more magazines in her vest, 80 rounds total. 80 rounds to cover a 12-man team, fighting their way through superior numbers in a compound full of armed hostiles and panicked civilians. The mathematics of survival were stark and unforgiving. Phantom 1 is moving, Reeves called. Overwatch, clear our path. The SEALs broke from cover in a coordinated movement, providing covering fire for each other as they began their tactical withdrawal. Immediately, hostile fighters moved to intercept them. Maya's rifle became an instrument of precision violence. A fighter appearing in a doorway cracked down, another on a rooftop cracked down, a third leveling an RPG crack. The rocket launcher fell unused. Her world narrowed to the scope, to the rhythm of breathing and shooting. Identify, confirm hostile, lead the target, squeeze, repeat. Stone called out threats in a steady stream, his voice the only anchor to reality outside her scope's narrow field of view. Contact left by the blue truck. Crack! Rooftop northwest corner. Crack! 2 hostiles, main gate. They're trying to cut off the exit. Crack, crack. The SEALs fought their way across the compound, every meter purchased with blood and bullets. Maya's rifle spoke with mechanical precision, each shot carefully placed, each threat neutralized before it could kill her teammates. But there were so many, too many. And the situation was about to get much worse. Heavy machine gun. Stone's voice took on an urgent edge. They've got another position, east wall, concrete bunker. They're about to have the whole team in their sights. Maya swung her scope to the position. Through a narrow firing slit, she could see the muzzle of a PKM machine gun swinging toward her teammates. The gunner was almost completely concealed behind thick concrete walls, just a shadow in the darkness of the bunker. And he was 937 meters away, in gusting winds that had picked up with the rising sun. Chen, that gun is going to shred them, Stone said urgently. Through her scope, Maya saw Commander Reeves break cover, exposing himself to draw fire so his wounded teammates could reach better positions. The machine gun's muzzle tracked toward him. Everything came down to this moment, this shot. Maya's mind processed 1,000 variables in an instant: distance, wind, the partially concealed target, the narrow window of opportunity. It was the kind of shot that instructors used to demonstrate the limits of what was possible. The kind of shot that had a 50% success rate even in perfect conditions. And these conditions were far from perfect. But her teammates were dying down there, and she was the only thing standing between them and annihilation. "Taking the shot," she said quietly. Stone's voice was tight. "Maya, it's nearly impossible." But she was already in the zone, that place beyond doubt, beyond fear, where only the shot existed. Her breathing slowed to nothing. Her heartbeat seemed to pause. The world contracted to the narrow view through her scope, to the shadow behind that firing slit, to the steady pressure of her finger on the trigger. And in that frozen moment between heartbeats, Maya Chen took the impossible shot. Time crystallized into a single, perfect moment. Maya's world contracted to the precise geometry of the shot. 937 meters. Wind gusting between 8 and 14 knots from the southeast, swirling unpredictably through the valley as the rising sun heated the desert floor. The target, barely visible through a firing slit no more than 8 inches tall, was a shadow with a machine gun that would massacre her team in seconds. Through her scope, she watched dust devils dance across the compound, nature's indicators of wind patterns invisible to the naked eye. She'd spent thousands of hours learning to read wind, to see the invisible, to feel what couldn't be touched. Now all that training distilled into pure instinct. The machine gunner's shoulder moved. He was settling behind his weapon, finger moving toward the trigger. 3 seconds, maybe 4, before he opened fire. "Maya," Stone's voice carried desperate urgency. But she was beyond words now, beyond thought. Her mind performed calculations that would take a computer seconds to process. Bullet drop at this distance, the Coriolis effect from the Earth's rotation, the temperature affecting powder burn rate, the specific ballistic coefficient of her .300 Winchester Magnum round. She watched a dust devil dissolve near the compound wall. The wind was pausing, that brief moment of stillness that came between gusts. It would last perhaps 2 seconds. One heartbeat to steady, one heartbeat to fire. Through the firing slit, the shadow shifted. The machine gun's barrel angled down, finding its target. Commander Reeves was in the open, dragging Henderson toward cover, completely exposed. Maya's finger took up the trigger's slack. The rifle was an extension of her body, as natural as breathing. Her crosshairs settled on that narrow opening, on the shadow behind it, on the space where bullet and target would intersect. The wind paused. Her heart beat once. The world held its breath. She pressed the trigger with the gentleness of a lover's touch. Crack! The rifle's recoil was absorbed by her body, by her training, by the 1,000 times she'd fired this exact weapon. But her eye never left the scope, tracking the shot across 937 meters of space, watching for the impact that would tell her if she'd succeeded or failed. For an eternal second, nothing happened. Then the machine gun's barrel tilted upward, firing wildly into the sky as unseen hands released it. The gunner's shadow collapsed backward into the darkness of the bunker. The weapon fell silent. "Holy shit," Stone's voice was barely a whisper. "Holy shit, you made it." But Maya was already moving to the next target. No time for celebration, no time for reflection. Her teammates were still in hell, and her rifle was their lifeline. "Target down," she reported with clinical calm, as if she hadn't just made a shot that defied probability. "Scanning for additional threats." Through her scope, she saw Commander Reeves look up toward the ridgeline. A brief moment of acknowledgement, before he continued dragging Henderson to safety. The SEALs were fighting their way toward the extraction point, but they were still deep in hostile territory with 50 meters of open ground ahead. Multiple contacts converging on Phantom One's position, Stone called out. They're trying to surround them. Maya's scope swept across the compound with predatory efficiency. A fighter emerging from a doorway on the left cracked down. Two more rushing from the right crack, both eliminated. A hostile on a rooftop drawing a bead on Martinez, crack. He pitched forward off the roof. Her magazine ran dry. She dropped it with practiced speed, her left hand already bringing a fresh magazine from her vest. Magazine in, bolt forward back in the fight. The reload took less than 3 seconds. Phantom One is taking casualties. Reeves's strained voice came through the radio. Rodriguez is hit. We need that extraction point clear now. Maya's scope tracked to the extraction zone, an open area 50 meters from the compound where vehicles would meet them. 3 hostiles were setting up an ambush position behind a low wall, perfectly positioned to catch the SEALs in a crossfire. Stone, range those targets by the extraction point. 962 meters. Wind picking back up, now gusting to 16 knots, variable direction. Even longer range, worse wind, moving targets using cover effectively. Maya steadied her breathing. The first hostile was the leader. She could tell by his body language, the way the others positioned themselves around him. Take him out and the others might break. Miss, and they'd all go to ground, making follow-up shots nearly impossible. He moved behind the wall, only his head and shoulders visible for brief moments as he coordinated his fighters. Maya watched his pattern. 3 seconds behind cover, 2 seconds exposed. 3 seconds, 2 seconds. Predictable. She waited for his rhythm, her crosshairs tracking the space where he would appear. The wind gusted, then eased slightly. Not perfect conditions, but they'd have to do. He rose into her crosshairs right on schedule. Crack! Through 962 meters of turbulent air, the bullet flew true. The hostile leader collapsed, and immediately his 2 companions panicked, breaking cover in opposite directions. Crack! Both went down within 2 seconds of each other. Extraction point is clear, Stone reported, something like awe creeping into his professional demeanor. 3 for 3 at nearly 1,000 meters. The SEALs broke into a run, carrying their wounded, laying down covering fire as they sprinted toward the extraction point. Maya's scope swept continuously, hunting for threats. A muzzle flash from a window, she engaged before the hostile could fire. A fighter trying to flank from the north, eliminated. Another attempting to follow the SEALs. He never made it 3 steps. Phantom One is at extraction, Reeves called out. Vehicles inbound 30 seconds. But 30 seconds was an eternity in combat. The remaining hostiles, seeing their prey about to escape, threw everything they had at the SEALs. Dozens of fighters emerged from the compound, firing on full automatic, desperate to kill the Americans before they could escape. Maya's rifle became a metronome of death, steady, methodical, precise. Every shot carefully placed despite the chaos, every target confirmed before engagement despite the urgency. This was what separated trained snipers from shooters, the discipline to maintain standards even when the world was burning. Stone called targets in rapid succession. 3 fighters main gate, 2 on the west wall, single hostile with RPG northeast corner. I see him, Maya interrupted. The RPG was the most dangerous threat. 1 rocket could disable the extraction vehicles or kill multiple SEALs. The fighter was kneeling, already shouldering the launcher, aiming at where the vehicles would arrive. The range was over 1,000 meters now as the SEALs had moved away from the compound. The wind was gusting harder. The target was partially obscured by morning heat shimmer rising from the desert floor. Maya accounted for everything in a fraction of a second. The extreme range, the atmospheric conditions, the moving target, the catastrophic consequences of a miss. Her crosshairs settled on the fighter's center mass. At this range, aiming for a headshot was too risky. Center mass gave her the best probability of a hit. Crack! The fighter jerked and fell sideways, the RPG firing wildly into the air, its rockets spiraling harmlessly into the empty sky before exploding against a distant hillside. RPG threat eliminated. Stone's voice carried unconcealed admiration now. Extraction vehicles are on site. Through her scope, Maya watched two armored SUVs screech to a halt beside the SEALs. Her teammates piled in with their wounded, still returning fire, still fighting even as they escaped. Martinez was the last one in, providing cover as the doors slammed shut. Phantom 1 is mobile, Reeves reported. All personnel accounted for. Overwatch, you are cleared to extract. But Maya kept her rifle trained on the compound, covering the vehicles as they raced away, eliminating two more hostiles who tried to pursue. Only when the SUVs were safely out of range did she finally allow herself to ease off the trigger. The compound was littered with bodies, 17 hostiles down, every single one eliminated by her rifle. 17 precise shots across ranges from 800 to over 1,000 meters in variable wind conditions, with civilians present under the most intense pressure imaginable. She'd fired 43 rounds total, 17 kills, 0 civilian casualties. Stone lowered his spotting scope and turned to look at her directly. His expression had undergone a complete transformation. The contempt was gone. The skepticism had vanished. What remained was something Maya had been fighting to earn since the day she'd arrived at Fob Viper. Respect. That was, he paused, searching for words. I've been a SEAL for 12 years, worked with some of the best snipers in the world. That was the finest shooting I've ever witnessed. That shot on the machine gun nest, he shook his head. That was impossible, but you made it anyway. Maya began breaking down her position, her movements efficient despite the adrenaline still coursing through her system. It was necessary. That's different from impossible. Most snipers would have said it couldn't be done, would have looked for another solution. There wasn't another solution. There was only the shot. She looked at him directly. And I don't miss when my teammates' lives are on the line. I never have. I never will. Stone held her gaze for a long moment, then extended his hand. Derek Stone, I owe you an apology. Actually, I owe you about 100 apologies. I was wrong about you. Dead wrong. Maya shook his hand. Apology accepted. Now let's get off this ridge before they send someone to investigate what happened up here. They moved down the mountain faster than they'd climbed it, no longer enemies but brothers in arms, forged together in the crucible of combat. Behind them, the compound slowly came back to life, but by then they were ghosts again, vanishing into the desert like they'd never been there at all. Except the 17 bodies testified to the truth. A sniper had held the line, and when the impossible shot was required, she'd made it count. The descent should have been routine. Maya and Stone moved quickly down the ridge, weapons ready, scanning for threats. The extraction vehicles had successfully recovered the assault team, and air support was inbound to secure the area. In 15 minutes, they'd be back at Fob Viper, mission complete. Then everything went to hell. Overwatch, this is Phantom 1. Commander Reeves's voice crackled through their radios, tight with urgency. We've got a situation. Roadside IED just disabled both vehicles. We're immobile and taking fire. Heavy contact from multiple directions. Maya and Stone froze on the mountainside, exchanging horrified glances. What's your position? Stone demanded. 2 clicks south of the compound, along Route 7. They had a backup ambush waiting. Professional setup, they channeled us right into it. Gunfire punctuated Reeves's words. We've got 4 wounded, including Henderson, who's critical. Rodriguez took shrapnel from the IED. He's bleeding out. We need immediate CASEVAC. Air support is still 8 minutes out, TOC responded. Can you hold? Negative, we've got at least 40 hostiles converging on our position. They're not militia, these are trained fighters with RPGs and heavy weapons. We need help now. Maya was already running, sliding down the rocky slope in controlled falls, Stone right behind her. But they were too far away. 2 kilometers over rough terrain, even at a full sprint they were 10 minutes out. Maybe more. And the team didn't have 10 minutes. Phantom 1, this is Overwatch, Stone transmitted between gasps of breath. We're moving to your position. Hold on. Negative, Overwatch, Reeves shouted over intense gunfire. You're 2 shooters against 40+ hostiles. You'll just get yourselves killed. Fall back to the secondary extraction point. With all due respect, sir, Maya cut in, her voice steady despite running full speed down a mountainside with 60 pounds of gear. That's not happening. They hit the valley floor at a dead sprint. 2 kilometers. Maya's legs burned, her lungs screamed for air, but she pushed harder. Behind them on the ridge, they'd been snipers, precision instruments delivering death at a distance. Now they were just 2 operators racing against time to save their team. The sound of battle grew louder as they approached, the distinctive crack of M4 rifles mixing with the deeper bark of AK-47s and the devastating bursts of machine gun fire. Black smoke rose from the disabled vehicles ahead. 300 meters out, Stone panted into his radio. What's your tactical situation? Not good, Martinez responded. Martinez, which meant Reeves was too busy fighting to talk. We're pinned in a dried streambed. Vehicles are totaled. Rodriguez is down bad. He's lost too much blood. Henderson's unconscious. Commander Reeves took a round to the shoulder, but he's still fighting. We're almost out of ammo. 200 meters, Maya reported, her sniper rifle now feeling like a liability for the close-quarters fight they were running toward. But she kept it anyway. You never abandoned your primary weapon. Through a gap in the terrain, she caught her first glimpse of the disaster. The 2 extraction vehicles were burning wrecks, torn apart by a massive IED that had cratered the road. The surviving SEALs had taken cover in a dried streambed 20 meters away, but it offered minimal protection. Hostile fighters were advancing from 3 sides, using rocks and sparse vegetation for cover, methodically closing the noose. Stone left flank, Maya shouted. I'll take right. We hit them from outside, draw their attention. Roger that. They split up without further discussion, each moving to engage the hostiles from an unexpected angle. Maya dropped prone behind a boulder formation, quickly assessing the tactical situation through her scope. 12 hostiles visible on the right flank, moving in fire and maneuver teams. Professional. Disciplined. She picked the team leader first, always disrupt command and control. Crack. He went down. His team immediately went to ground, confused by fire from an unexpected direction. Maya shifted targets, dropping 2 more before they could identify her position. On the left, Stone opened up with his M4, the rapid fire of his carbine drawing hostile attention away from the pinned SEALs. It was working. Some of the fighters were repositioning to deal with the new threats. But there were too many of them. Overwatch, they're trying to overrun our position. Martinez's voice was desperate now. They know we're almost dry on ammo. Maya burned through her remaining sniper ammunition with brutal efficiency. 6 shots, 6 kills. Then her magazine was empty and she had no more rounds for the rifle. She transitioned to her M4 carbine, chambered in 5.56 and continued engaging. The firefight devolved into chaos. Maya moved between positions, firing controlled bursts, denying the hostiles any chance to coordinate their assault. Stone was doing the same on the opposite flank, his marksmanship keeping an entire squad pinned down. But they were buying time, not winning. The math was unforgiving, 2 shooters against 40, with wounded teammates who couldn't fight and ammunition running critically low. Air support, how far out? Reeves demanded over the radio. 5 minutes, came the reply. 5 minutes, an eternity in combat. A hostile fighter broke from cover, sprinting toward the streambed with an RPG on his shoulder. Maya tracked him, squeezed the trigger, click. Empty magazine. She dropped it, reached for a fresh one, but she was down to her last 2 magazines. 20 rounds between her and complete helplessness. Stone's M4 barked and the RPG gunner fell, but 2 more immediately took his place, providing covering fire for a larger assault. "They're rushing us," Martinez shouted, "all sides." Dozens of fighters broke from cover simultaneously, sprinting toward the streambed in a coordinated assault. They'd calculated that the Americans were almost out of ammunition, and they were right. This was their final push, overwhelmed through sheer numbers. Maya made a split-second decision. She abandoned her covered position and sprinted toward the streambed, firing on the move, dropping hostiles with desperate precision. Stone saw what she was doing and did the same, both of them racing to reach their teammates before the enemy did. She slid into the streambed just as the first wave of hostiles reached the perimeter. The fight became point-blank, brutal, primal. Maya fired her M4 until it locked back empty, then drew her sidearm. A hostile appeared above her. She shot him twice, center mass. Another came from her left. 3 rounds, he went down. Stone was beside her, fighting with controlled fury. Martinez, wounded but fighting, covered their right flank. Even Commander Reeves, blood streaming from his shoulder wound, was firing his last magazine. And then Maya's sidearm locked back empty. No ammunition left. Nothing. A hostile fighter appeared at the edge of the streambed, his AK-47 swinging toward her face. Time seemed to slow. She could see his finger tightening on the trigger, see the hatred in his eyes, see her own death in that black barrel. Stone's M4 barked once. The hostile collapsed. "I'm out," Stone shouted, his rifle's bolt locked back on an empty chamber. They were done. No ammunition, no options. The hostiles knew it too. More fighters were closing in, moving cautiously now, knowing their prey was defenseless. Maya grabbed the fallen hostile's AK-47, checked it, half a magazine. She rolled to a firing position, protecting the wounded. Stone did the same, picking up another enemy weapon. They took positions at opposite ends of the streambed, creating a defensive perimeter around Reeves, Henderson, Rodriguez, and the other wounded. The hostiles encircled them, weapons raised but not firing. They wanted prisoners now, intelligence, propaganda value. They called out in Arabic, demanding surrender. "Not a chance," Maya said quietly, her captured AK raised and ready. "Hell no," Stone agreed. Commander Reeves, his face pale from blood loss, managed a grim smile. "Proud to serve with you both." For 3 endless minutes they held that position. The hostiles called for surrender. Maya and Stone responded with silence and raised weapons. The standoff was a stalemate, but everyone knew how it would end. Eventually, the hostiles would rush them, accept the casualties, and overwhelm them through sheer numbers. But those 3 minutes felt like 3 hours. Every second stretched into eternity. Maya's finger rested on the AK's trigger, her mind calculating angles and threats. If they rushed, she could drop maybe 3 before they reached her. Stone would get a few more. Then it would end in hand-to-hand combat that neither of them would survive against these odds. Rodriguez was unconscious now, his breathing shallow. Henderson hadn't moved in minutes. Reeves was growing weaker, his wounded shoulder bleeding steadily despite the pressure bandage. They'd fought so hard, come so far, survived so much. It couldn't end like this. It shouldn't end like this. But sometimes courage and skill weren't enough. Sometimes the numbers were just too great. "If this is it," Stone said quietly, "I want you to know you're the finest operator I've ever served with. Man or woman doesn't matter. You're just the best." Maya kept her eyes on the enemy, but she heard the sincerity in his voice. "Likewise, it's been an honor." The hostile fighters were getting ready to rush. She could see it in their body language, the way they were positioning themselves, building up courage for the final assault where some of them would die but all of the Americans would fall. Maya tightened her grip on the AK-47. When they came, she'd make every shot count. She'd protect her wounded teammates until the very last bullet, the very last breath. The fighters tensed, ready to charge. And then the sky came alive with thunder. 2 Apache attack helicopters crested the ridgeline like avenging angels, their 13 chain guns already spinning up. The distinctive BRRRT of the M230 cannon was the most beautiful sound Maya had ever heard. The hostile fighters scattered in panic, but there was nowhere to run. The Apache cannons tore through them with devastating precision. The sandstorm that had delayed them finally cleared. In seconds, the overwhelming enemy force was reduced to scattered survivors fleeing desperately into the desert. Phantom 1, this is Guardian 3-1, the pilot's voice came through their radios. Sorry we're late to the party. CASEVAC birds are inbound 2 minutes out. Sit tight, we'll keep these bastards off you. Maya lowered the AK-47, her hands trembling slightly now that the adrenaline was wearing off. They'd held. Against impossible odds with no ammunition, facing certain death, they'd held the line for 3 minutes. And 3 minutes had been enough. Stone collapsed back against the streambed wall, laughing, a slightly hysterical sound born of survival and relief. 3 minutes. We held them for 3 goddamn minutes. Long enough, Maya said quietly, moving to check on Rodriguez. His pulse was thready but present. Henderson was breathing. They'd all make it. Barely, but they'd make it. The CASEVAC helicopters landed under the protective guns of the Apache, medics pouring out to stabilize the wounded. As Rodriguez was loaded onto a stretcher, his eyes opened briefly. He saw Maya kneeling beside him and managed a weak smile. "Sentinel," he whispered. The word spread through the team as they were evacuated, passed from operator to operator like a sacred truth. Sentinel, the one who holds the line, the one who stands watch, the one who protects. By the time they returned to Fob Viper, exhausted and bloodied but alive, Maya Chen had a new call sign, one earned in blood and fire and desperate courage. Sentinel, the one who never quit, the one who held the line when all seemed lost, the one who proved that heroism had nothing to do with gender and everything to do with heart. The medical tent at Fob Viper was organized chaos. Doctors and medics worked frantically on Rodriguez, whose blood loss had been catastrophic. Henderson lay unconscious on another table, suffering from severe head trauma. Commander Reeves, despite his own gunshot wound, refused treatment until his men were stabilized. Maya sat on a bench outside the tent, still in her blood-stained uniform, her hands wrapped around a bottle of water she hadn't opened. Stone sat beside her, similarly exhausted, neither of them speaking. What was there to say? They'd survived what shouldn't have been survivable. Chen, Stone. Commander Reeves emerged from the medical tent, his left arm in a sling, his face gray with pain and exhaustion. Walk with me. They followed him away from the medical area, toward a quiet corner of the base where the desert stretched endlessly under the afternoon sun. For a long moment, Reeves just stared out at the horizon, gathering his thoughts. Rodriguez is stable, he finally said. He'll need surgery, but the docs think he'll make it. Henderson's got a severe concussion but no skull fracture. The others will recover. He turned to face them both. Because of you two, you saved this entire platoon. Sir, we were just, Maya started. Don't, Reeves interrupted firmly. Don't diminish what you did out there. I've been a SEAL for 22 years. I've seen incredible acts of courage, impossible feats of skill. What you did today, Chen, he shook his head. That shooting on the ridge was beyond anything I've witnessed. 17 kills at ranges exceeding 900 meters in variable wind with civilians present. 0 collateral damage. And that machine gun nest shot, he paused. Stone, you've worked with some of the best snipers in naval special warfare. Have you ever seen shooting like that? Stone met Reeves's eyes. "No, sir, never, that was." He looked at Maya with something approaching wonder. "That was the kind of shooting people will talk about for decades, the kind that becomes legend." Maya shifted uncomfortably. "I just did my job, sir." "Your job," Reeves repeated. "Yes, the job I wasn't entirely sure you could handle. The job half this platoon thought you'd fail at. The job that Stone," he looked at the petty officer, "actively hoped you'd fail at." Stone's face reddened, but he didn't deny it. "I doubted you," Reeves continued, his voice heavy with regret. "Not your training, not your qualifications, but I doubted whether you could handle the pressure, whether you'd freeze when lives hung in the balance, whether a woman could operate at this level in these conditions." He extended his good hand. "I was wrong. Completely, utterly wrong. You're one of the finest operators I've ever had the privilege to serve with, and I'm sorry it took a firefight like today for me to see it." Maya shook his hand, feeling the genuine respect and remorse in his grip. "Thank you, sir. That means more than you know." "And you," Reeves turned to Stone. "I watched your after-action report. You said, and I quote, 'Staff Sergeant Chen's performance exceeded all expectations and standards. Her tactical decision-making was flawless, her marksmanship was unparalleled, and her courage under fire was inspirational. She saved my life and the lives of my teammates multiple times. I was wrong about her, and I'm proud to serve alongside her.'" Stone looked at Maya. "Every word of that is true. I was prejudiced, blind, stupid. I saw what I expected to see instead of what was right in front of me." He extended his hand to her. "I'm sorry, Maya, for the comments, the attitude, the deliberate attempts to make you fail. You're not just a good sniper, you're the best damn sniper I've ever worked with. And more than that, you're the kind of warrior I aspire to be." Maya shook his hand, seeing the genuine transformation in his eyes. "We all have blind spots, Stone. The measure of a person is whether they can see past them. You did. That takes courage too." A commotion from across the base drew their attention. The rest of Phantom Platoon was emerging from the TOC, where they'd been watching the drone footage of the entire operation. Martinez led the group, and when he saw Maya, he started clapping. Slowly, deliberately, one person at a time, the entire platoon joined in. The applause built like thunder. SEALs who'd scorned her, doubted her, resented her, now standing in respect for what she'd accomplished. Martinez reached her first, pulling her into a brief, fierce hug. "Sentinel," he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "That's your call sign now. The one who holds the line, the one who never quits, the one who stands watch over us all." The name spread through the group, spoken with reverence. Sentinel, not the new girl or diversity hire or any of the other dismissive labels they'd used. A name earned in blood and fire. A name that spoke of courage, skill, and unwavering dedication. One by one, the SEALs approached her. Some shook her hand. Others just nodded, too moved for words. A few apologized for their earlier treatment. Maya accepted it all with quiet grace, understanding that this moment was bigger than her personal vindication. This was about proving what was possible, about opening doors that had been closed, about demonstrating that courage and competence transcended gender. Later that evening, the entire platoon gathered in the common area. Someone had scrounged up a case of near beer, the non-alcoholic stuff they were allowed in theater. Commander Reeves, his arm still in a sling, raised his bottle. "To Phantom Platoon," he said. "To the wounded who fought through hell and survived. To the brotherhood," he paused, then corrected himself. "To the family we've become. And to Sentinel, who proved that the only thing that matters in combat is courage, skill, and the refusal to let your teammates down." "To Sentinel," the platoon roared in unison. Maya stood among them, no longer an outsider but fully accepted as one of them. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, the years of training, the doubt, the mockery, the constant pressure to be not just good but perfect. The lonely bunks, the hostile stares, the weight of representing all women in special operations. It had been worth it. Every painful step had been worth it. Stone approached her as the gathering began to wind down. "You know what the crazy thing is," he said quietly. "I spent months trying to prove you didn't belong here. Turns out the only thing I proved was my own ignorance." "People fear what they don't understand," Maya replied. "You understand now. That's what matters." "I do understand. I understand that I just witnessed something historic. The day women proved they belong in naval special warfare, not because of policy or politics, but because of pure, undeniable capability." He paused. "My daughter is 7 years old. Because of what you did today, she'll grow up in a world where her dreams don't have arbitrary limits. Thank you for that." Maya felt unexpected emotion tighten her throat. "What's her name?" "Emily. She wants to be an astronaut," Stone smiled. "Used to be I'd tell her, 'That's nice, honey, but maybe think about something more realistic.' After today, I'm going to tell her the sky isn't even the limit, that if she works hard enough, if she's dedicated enough, if she refuses to quit, she can accomplish anything." As the gathering dispersed and Maya finally made her way back to her tent, she found it transformed. The isolation that had marked her bunk was gone. Someone had moved Martinez's gear to the bunk beside hers. Others had rearranged to be closer. Her space was no longer an island of separation, but integrated into the team's living area. On her pillow lay a handmade patch, rough but heartfelt. It showed a rifle crossed with a sword and a single word: Sentinel. Maya held the patch, feeling its weight, understanding its significance. This wasn't just acceptance. This was belonging. This was family. She lay back on her bunk, exhaustion finally catching up with her. Tomorrow would bring new missions, new challenges, new opportunities to prove herself. But tonight, she could rest knowing she'd achieved what she'd set out to do. She hadn't just survived. She hadn't just succeeded. She'd excelled. She'd proven that women could operate at the highest levels of special operations, not as a social experiment or diversity initiative, but as warriors who could hold the line when it mattered most. The mockery was gone, replaced by respect. The doubt had been burned away in the crucible of combat, and the question of whether she belonged had been answered definitively, not by words or policies, but by actions under fire. Maya Chen, Call Sign Sentinel, had earned her place among the elite, and in doing so, she'd opened a door that could never be closed again. Outside, the desert wind whispered across Fob Viper, carrying stories of courage and transformation into the endless night. And somewhere out there, beyond the wire, beyond the darkness, the next generation of warriors, male and female alike, dreamed of following in her footsteps. The line had been held, the impossible had been achieved, and nothing would ever be the same again. The end.